"Let's go," he said, but what choice did I have? I just agreed, shook my head, so off we went. I was tired, but where we were going had no bed. "We'll be there soon," he said, but I didn't have the heart. I just smiled, shook my head. "He was full of hope," I said, "isn't it?" He went on, "What I think?" But I didn't have the heart. I just paused, shook my head. The train blazed by. We hitched a ride. That part was easy. We sat there safely. "My dreams are in that city," he said, but I couldn't say a thing. I just frowned, shook my head. We arrived late evening night. He was energetic, full of joy. The city was damp, dark with hate, but I didn't have the heart. I just followed, shook my head, jealous of his happiness. Those people stared. He was silly but kind, without despair. It's all my fault what happened that day. I just weep, shaking my head. If only I could have told him, he wouldn't lay there dead. He stood in the dusk glow of the station light, coat too large, dreams too big. His hand was extended, palm open, calloused from work he hadn't yet done. "Let's go," he said, and what choice did I have? The wind blew sharp across the lot, carrying the scent of far-off fires and old diesel. I looked at him, the tilt of his grin, the shimmer in his eye like he was already halfway there. I didn't answer. I just nodded, slow and tired, and shook my head. Not no, not yes, just shook it like I was trying to dislodge the weight of something pressing on the back of my skull. He laughed, didn't notice. Or maybe he did and chose not to. We climbed the embankment by the tracks where rusted metal met frozen weeds. A train roared past like a beast with no memory, only momentum. We waited for the right moment, then clambered aboard a slow flatbed hitched to a half-dead freighter. That part was easy. The cold steel floor welcomed us like an old friend with secrets. The boy, he was still just a boy then, rubbed his hands together, cupped his breath like it was magic, and leaned back against the crate beside us. "My dreams are in that city," he said, staring at the skyline far ahead where lights glimmered like promises. I looked at him, the way he said "my dreams" like it was something real you could hold. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words curled inside me like burnt paper. I frowned and shook my head. We rode in silence mostly. The kind of silence you don't break with small talk. Just the rhythmic screech of the rails beneath us, the occasional groan of metal shifting under weight, and his humming, low, tuneless, content, like he thought the world would catch up to his melody if he just kept going. I watched the frost creep along the edge of the container wall, fractals forming like fragile maps. Maybe that's what I wanted, something to chart the way, some frozen geometry that could tell me when to speak, when to stop him. But there were no signs, just the ache behind my eyes and the heavy drum of inevitability in my chest. "We'll be there soon," he said. He said it like it meant something, like there was a there waiting for us. He pulled a photograph from his pocket, creased, smudged, nearly worn through, a skyline taken from the hills outside the city, sunset behind it. He held it up like scripture. "Someday," he whispered, "I'll be more than where I came from." I nodded again. That was all I ever did, smiled like it didn't hurt, and shook my head. He didn't see it, or pretended not to. He told me about a job he might find, about a girl he once saw in a magazine. Said she looked like someone who lived in the city, so maybe he'd find her. About music he'd make, people he'd meet, things he'd build. A tower of hope, story by story. I wanted to say it, it's not like that. Not anymore, maybe it never was. But my mouth stayed closed, my teeth clenched like gates. There was always a reason not to ruin things, wasn't there? And so I just sat there staring at the blur of snow-dusted pine trees flashing by. Dreams are easy when you're far enough away from them. The train slowed near dawn, coughing smoke into the orange spill of early light. We hopped off somewhere south of the city, where fields gave way to wire fences and silence was cut into squares by distant sirens. The boy landed hard, then laughed, dirt on his cheek, hope still intact. I followed. I always did. We walked the rest of the way, boots crunching over gravel past rusted signage and skeletal gas stations half swallowed by weeds. The city grew like a fungus in the distance, concrete blooming in toxic shades beneath a silvered sky. "Almost there," he said. I didn't ask where there was. A fox darted across the road ahead of us, thin and desperate. It stopped for a moment, staring at us like it knew something we didn't. Then it vanished into a crumbled culvert, tail flicking like punctuation on a sentence we hadn't read yet. The boy kept talking, about old songs he remembered from his dad's cassette deck, about how this city had its own music, its own rhythm, how he'd learn it like a language. I listened. I always listened. But there was something tightening in my chest with every step we took. We passed under an overpass scrawled with fading graffiti. Names, warnings, symbols I didn't recognize. He stopped. "Isn't it beautiful?" he asked. I looked around. The paint was peeling, the air smelled like ash, and a dead pigeon lay near the curb like a warning sign someone forgot to read. But he saw color in the cracks, meaning in the decay. I could have said no. I could have told him what I really saw, but instead I paused and shook my head. We crossed into the outer city, just as the sky turned pewter. Clouds rolled low and heavy, pressing down on the buildings like they wanted to bury them. The streets were slick with old rain and something else, grime that never washed off. Neon signs blinked half alive in shop windows. Faces moved behind glass, gray, hurried, eyes too tired to care. And still, the boy smiled. He bounced on his heels outside a shuttered cafe, pointing at a mural flaking off the wall. "Look," he said, "it's like it's still breathing." The mural was of a woman holding a key. Her eyes had been scratched out, her mouth painted over with something newer. Black lines, jagged and trembling, as if the city had spoken back to her and didn't like what she said. He didn't see it, he never saw what I saw. He waved to a man huddled in a coat on the curb. The man didn't wave back, just stared, hollow and unmoved until we were gone. We kept walking, deeper in. There was a rhythm here, but it wasn't the one he imagined. This wasn't the heartbeat of a dream, it was the clicking of locks, the shuffle of feet avoiding eye contact, the whisper of paper-thin currency exchanged for something much heavier. Still, he laughed as he spun around a lamppost. "This place, it's like the bones of something ancient, right? Like it used to matter." I wanted to tell him, "It still matters, just not the way you think," but I didn't. The words sat on the tip of my tongue, dead weight. Instead, I looked past him at a shadow in a doorway, at the way it shifted when we moved, and I shook my head. By midday, the clouds gave way to a sickly yellow light that seeped through the alleys like infection. The boy didn't mind. He said it made the city glow. We found a place to sit, a concrete ledge beneath a broken billboard that once advertised paradise. Now it just advertised rust. He dug through his pack and offered me half a granola bar like we were on a picnic. "Once I get a job," he said, chewing, "we'll get a place. Not big, doesn't need to be, just walls. Warmth. A view, maybe." I stared at the buildings across the street. The windows were bricked, the doors scarred with pry marks. Somewhere above, a child cried, a raw, looping wail that went unanswered. He didn't seem to notice. "Maybe near the park," he went on. "With a rooftop. You ever watch sunsets from a rooftop? I had. Not here. Not lately." I wanted to say, "This place doesn't give you rooftops, it gives you floors. Below ground, if you're lucky." But I just stared at him. He was still so clean compared to everything around him. His jacket still held its color, his shoes had tread. He hadn't been here long enough to know what this city did to color. "I'll build something here," he said, tapping his chest. "From nothing." From nothing, I thought. That's exactly what this city wants. Nothing in, nothing out. I looked away. There was movement in the alley across from us, a figure watching, then gone. I tensed. My body knew before I did. Something was unraveling. He stretched out on the ledge, hands behind his head, gazing up at the fractured skyline like it was heaven. I wanted to say we should leave, but instead I stood beside him and shook my head. As night crawled in, the city changed its face. The hum turned to growl, lights flickered, shadows multiplied. You could feel it in your bones, that shift, that turning of unseen gears behind the alleys and glass, like something deep under the pavement had begun to stir. Still, he walked like he belonged, like the city would welcome him if he smiled wide enough. We passed by a street vendor grilling meat on a barrel fire. The scent was thick with spice and smoke. The boy pulled out a few crumpled bills, his last, I think, and bought 2 skewers. He handed me one like we'd earned it. "This is the kind of meal that matters," he said, chewing as if the world was still good. I didn't eat mine. The meat was gray and trembling. Somewhere behind us a siren screamed, too close. The vendor closed up shop in seconds, vanished into the blur of foot traffic. I watched the alleys again. Something was following us. I could feel it in the way the shadows lengthened before the sun had fully set. We found shelter beneath an overhang near a stairwell to nowhere. The concrete was cracked, the air smelled like rust and urine. Still, the boy sat with his back against the wall, eyes closed, a smile tugging at his lips. "I think this is the place," he whispered, "where things start." I looked at him, how young he still was in that moment, how sure, and I hated that I couldn't be like him. I sat beside him, watching the dark curl closer, the way a wound closes around infection. I wanted to tell him the truth. This city doesn't build, it devours. But I didn't. I just closed my eyes too, and shook my head. The rain came suddenly, like the city had been holding its breath all day and finally exhaled in cold sheets. We ran for cover, ducking into an abandoned storefront. The glass was gone, the frame bent like something had tried to claw its way in, or out. Inside, the air was thick with mold and old paper. Broken mannequins lay scattered across the floor like fallen ghosts of forgotten dreams. The boy laughed, shaking water from his hair. "It's kind of beautiful, isn't it?" he said. I wiped rain from my face, looked at him, his clothes soaked, his shoes squeaking on broken tile, but still, he smiled, always smiling. "You ever think about how many people came through here?" he asked, pacing slowly between the scattered limbs of mannequins. "How many lives passed through this place, believing in tomorrow?" I said nothing. I looked past him, to the corner where the wall met a broken staircase. Faint movement. Not rats, bigger. Someone was watching us. I felt it before I saw it, a pair of eyes just beyond the light, where the rain didn't reach, watching, waiting. He didn't notice. He was talking about light fixtures now, how he'd refit them, string up lanterns, turn the place into something warm. "We could make it ours," he said. "Not forever, just a start." He was planning hope, while something out there planned something else. I should have pulled him away, should have said we're not safe, but hope is contagious, and I was so tired of being the sick one. Instead, I leaned against the counter, heart hammering, every instinct screaming, and I watched the darkness gather, and I shook my head. We stayed too long. By the time we stepped back out, the streets had changed again. Emptier, sharper. The city had shed its skin. Now it stared with cold eyes, unblinking. The boy walked ahead, feet splashing through puddles, hands in his pockets, still humming like a child with a secret. I kept a few paces behind, scanning rooftops, alleys, the reflection of movement in every window we passed. There were too many footsteps echoing ours. Too many shadows not shaped like us. We turned down a narrow corridor between buildings where the city had forgotten to sweep. Trash crunched underfoot, glass shimmered like tiny knives in the wet. I smelled gasoline. "I think there's a hostel near here," he said. "We'll crash for the night, figure it out in the morning." The corridor bent around a corner, and that's when I saw them. 3 of them, maybe 4, Faces half covered, bodies loose like wires about to snap. Eyes that looked through you instead of at you. The boy stopped, smiled. "Hey," he said, lifting a hand. "We don't want trouble. Just passing." They didn't care. Words didn't mean anything here. Not anymore. One of them stepped forward. Thin, jittering. A blade flashed at his hip, more for show than speed, but the others moved like they didn't need threats. They already knew what this was. I stepped between them. The boy touched my shoulder. "It's okay," he said. "They're just scared, like everyone else." He still believed in people, in talking, in light, in dreams. I wanted to scream at him. This city eats kindness, swallows it whole. But I couldn't get the words out fast enough. I turned back, just in time to see the first punch thrown, just in time to hear him gasp, just in time to see the shadow of the blade before it vanished beneath his ribs. And as he fell, I shook my head. He hit the pavement like a secret breaking open, quiet, heavy, final. The others scattered before I even reached him, ghosts dispersing at dawn. No names, no words, just the echo of fleeing feet, swallowed by rain. I dropped to my knees beside him. His eyes blinked wide at the sky, confused, searching. One hand reached for me, trembling. "I didn't mean to," he whispered. "Shh," I said, pressing both hands to the warmth leaking from his side. "Too fast, too much, don't talk." He smiled through blood. "It's not so bad, right? Still got time." He was still trying to comfort me, still trying to believe, and I had nothing left to give. No story, no lesson, no promise. Just this, my silence, and the sound of rain hitting a city that had already forgotten him. Lights flickered in a nearby window. No one came. They never did. I thought of all the moments I could have spoken, all the truths I could have said. "It's not safe here. Your hope is beautiful, but it won't protect you. The city doesn't care who you are, only what it can take." But I said nothing. Always nothing. I had let him walk into the dark with a smile. He coughed once, eyes losing focus now. His hand slipped from mine and I broke inside where no one could see. Not loud, not fierce, just a quiet fracturing. Like glass under pressure, I bent my head over his, forehead to his temple, and wept. And still, I shook my head. The city didn't stop. It never does. Cars still rolled by on distant streets. Neon signs blinked on and off like lazy eyes. Somewhere, a couple argued through thin apartment walls. Life surged forward, indifferent. I stayed with him until the sun returned. Not bright, just a weak suggestion through the smog. He was cold by then, still, mouth slightly open like he was just about to say something, but there was nothing left to say. I stood, knees stiff, blood on my sleeves. No one had come, no one ever did. I looked up at the skyline he loved so much, those towers of glass and rot, clawing at a sky that never reached back. This city wasn't built for dreamers. I walked. No destination, no purpose, just one foot in front of the other. I passed by alley mouths that still whispered, storefronts that reflected a version of me I no longer recognized. And in every step, every breath, there was a single refrain repeating, "It's my fault." Not because I brought him here, not even because I couldn't save him, but because I knew. I knew the way cities consume. I knew what silence costs. I knew that sometimes the worst betrayal is not cruelty, it's kindness that keeps quiet. He had hope, and I let it bleed out. People passed me on the sidewalk, hurried, hollow. None of them looked at me. None of them saw the grief on my face, the blood on my cuffs, the ghost that walked beside me. Maybe they had ghosts too. I reached the edge of the city by nightfall. The wind was colder here, cleaner. I turned once, looked back. I thought I might say something aloud for him, for the first time, just one truth. But my throat clenched, my mouth failed, and all I could do was shake my head.